Hi, my name is Melissa, and I will be speaking about how Arizona laws affects our amendments and violates our rights. The first one I will be discussing is the Commerce Clause of Constitution, which gives the power to regulate commerce amongst all states. Arizona is criminalizing all the movement of any undocumented aliens across the U.S. international border within Arizona and across Arizona interstate borders, which include California, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah. This law also violates our First Amendment, which is our freedom of speech. This bill made it unlawful for any motor vehicle occupant to hire or attempt to hire a person for work at another location from a stopped car that impedes traffic or for a person to be hired in such manner. This violates our rights because they are restricting the commercial speech of day laborers and those who hire them. Another amendment it violates is our fourth, which is the freedom of unreasonable searches and seizures. And in order to suspect something is not the same as having probable cause. For instance, when an officer stops a person or a car, they need probable cause to search and seizure. So, for instance, if an officer stops someone and smells weed, they will have probable cause that they have marijuana on them. Well, Arizona passed a law that requires a policeman to seize and then detain a person if they suspect that a person is an illegal immigrant. The last amendment that it violates is the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause, which requires that states guarantee the same rights, privileges, and protections to all U.S. citizens, that no state should enforce any law that will cut privileges. As you know, Arizona is the first state to make it mandatory to carry proper citizenship documentation. As we learned in our class this semester, cultural citizenship, with this new Arizona law, mostly it targeted Latinos, and this made them feel less equal due to their race, even though you are a U.S. citizen. Those are the following amendments and rights that got violated, and now I hope you enjoy this short clip.
My name is Sinyan Ling. I'm an immigration defense attorney. In 2010, at the time of the passage of SB 1070 in Arizona, I was a lawyer at a nonprofit in San Francisco called the Asian Law Caucus. When SB 1070 was ushered into law in Arizona, a number of nonprofit organizations and civil rights groups filed a lawsuit in Arizona, including the American Civil Liberties Union, National Immigration Law Center, Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and all the Asian American civil rights organizations, filed a lawsuit to challenge the constitutionality of the Arizona law that essentially required Latinos and Asian immigrants to show paperwork. And it allowed the local government, specifically law enforcement, to ignore the law that requires the police to have something called reasonable suspicion to stop individuals. At that time, SB 1070 was being sold or marketed as this public safety law, but in reality it was a racist and xenophobic law that specifically intended to identify mostly Latino immigrants, to stop them, to find them, and subsequently to deport them. A number of organizations filed a lawsuit that was intended to stop the lawsuit and stop the law from going into effect until litigation went through the system. Several years later, other states followed in passing their version of a Show Me Your Papers law, which included Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and Indiana. And those states also passed a law that essentially intended to identify and deport immigrants who are here without legal status. 2010 was a year in which states tried to create their own immigration enforcement laws, but the reality is only the federal government has the authority and jurisdiction to deport and detain people, not local law enforcement. Fast forward 7 years later, most of those states who passed their versions of SB 1070, including Arizona, has essentially lost their part of the lawsuit. The Supreme Court in 2016 essentially struck down most of those provisions as unconstitutional, except for one particular piece that allows law enforcement, if they are able to establish reasonable suspicion when stopping a person, may ask an individual's immigration status. But beyond that, even the Supreme Court justices questioned how permissible or how far it can go. I think that's it.